all the things that I want to do, and everyone would be too afraid to speak their mind to him because this boy might do something to him with his mind powers. And so one day as they're at this party and everyone's tired of it, a woman decides to speak up and she says, I can't take it anymore. You're a little brat. Your jokes aren't funny. Your games aren't fun. I don't want to live this way. And everyone's quiet and afraid. And the little boy looks at her and says, you're mean. I don't like you. I'm going to turn you into a jack-in-the-box. And people say, no, don't do it. And he squinches his face and blinks his eyes, and he turns her into a jack-in-the-box. Then he turns around and looks at one of the men, a man who hates him. He says, you like what I did? And the little boy says, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a mighty fine thing you did there, boy. Oh, yeah. That's a mighty fine thing you did. Real funny there. Lying to himself, lying to the boy, because he was afraid. Does that sound familiar? It's the kind of world we live in. You think that's funny? You think that's a good story? No, I'll tell you what a good story is. I'll tell you what a good joke is. We live in a world where it's creativity that the enemy comes from. It's always been that way, and it always will be that way because the enemy despises what it cannot do. And what it cannot do, it seeks to destroy in us. So, continue to be mad at all of the things you're mad about. I'm not here to take away your anger. Continue to war against all the things you war against. I'm not here to take away your fighting spirit, but don't forget, the enemy has arguments too. The enemy has influencers too. The enemy has words too. But there's one thing that the enemy doesn't have, and it's the capacity to create, because everything that the state does as a matter of principle, it achieves through coercion. There is not one thing that it can do that it does without somehow compromising or imposing upon the freedoms of people like you and I. But we can do something that that machine, that system cannot do. We can make our mark through creativity. Tell your stories, tell your jokes, make your movies, make your music, and be so creative that you don't even limit creativity to the fine arts, but you wear it in everything that you do. Because to be human is to be creative is to be human. And that is what it means to be free. And when we speak with that kind of conviction, when we embody that spirit in everything that we are, we can make our arguments and we can make our case. And people will listen, not just because of the words, but they'll say, man, there's something in you that is not in me, and I want to connect to that. And then you can say, all right, let's have a conversation about the only kind of system that honors and respects your creativity and your individuality. Thank you.
Where's the movie? There he goes. There it is. TK. He's going to be the MC on the second stage tomorrow, starting tomorrow in the morning. So TK and I will be high-fiving, tag teaming, bringing you every possible angle of freedom and liberty that can possibly be covered. So well done. And as you know, at FreedomFest, next year is a presidential election year, so we are going to have several presidential candidates who will be talking to you, discussing their issues, their ideas, trying to win over your hearts and minds. And right now, so we only think about presidential elections in our country, but who is running the rest of the world, particularly in Latin America? Well, our next speaker is not only a political scientist, she is also a broadcaster, and she wrote a phenomenal book in 2016, El Engaño Populista, which translates to The Populist Deception. So please give a very warm Freedom Fest welcome to Gloria Alvarez. Bienvenido.
Hi, how are you? It's such a pleasure to be finally at FreedomFest. I've been invited so many times, and it's the first time that I got the opportunity to be here with all of you. And I want to start with a quote of one of my favorite libertarians in time, that is Frédéric Bastiat. He said, When the law and the moral contradict each other, the citizen has the cruel alternative of either going against their moral or going against the law. And I had that cruel alternative in Guatemala. Either I follow the cruel laws that do not let citizens live, because in Latin America, you know this very well, we don't have capitalism, we have state mercantilism. We are obsessed with the fact that the bureaucrat has magic powers that can control prices, give privileges, and criminalize free trade as contraband, which is one of the most unfair things that you can do to poor people. And of course, they make laws that guarantee that they are the only ones to have access to power, and they perpetuate very corrupt governments. In this logic, we have seen Venezuela, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, Chile, even Chile, which was the A student of Latin America, went back to socialism of the 21st century, right? We are obsessed with socialism, as I talked in the John Stossel interview recently about my presidential campaign. But Guatemala has not fallen into socialism of the 21st century, although we had a Marxist Cuban-type guerrilla for 36 years. What we have had is corrupt right-wing for the past 3 governments. A state mercantilist who hate free markets in the form of militaries who are with the drug dealing cartels, in the form of comedians, evangelical comedians from the right wing, and most recently a doctor who is, everybody knows this in Guatemala, he's homosexual, but he goes against the freedom of individuals, and he's also highly corrupt. Being a doctor, he stole a lot during COVID times. So what I started seeing, and I studied in Universidad Francisco Marroquín, UFM, some of you might know it as the Libertarian Disneyland University of the world. I started noticing that one of the reasons why people vote for socialism is because the right wing is so corrupt and goes against free trade and free individuals. They perpetuate oligarchs in the unions, like health and education. They don't like free trade. They protect with privileges the industries that once were in the state, and when they privatize them, they only give it to their friends. And because of this, inequality, economic inequality, which is not the worst inequality that we have in Latin America. The worst inequality that we have in Latin America is inequality under the law. And that means that if you're poor, you're rotten in jail, even if you're innocent, because you don't have enough money to bribe people. But if you are rich, the law is below you, and you can do whatever you want against, of course, individual rights of life, liberty, and private property for the rest. So within this atmosphere, I saw that because the right wing does it so bad, in cases like Macri in Argentina, Duque in Colombia, Piñera in Chile, Bolsonaro in Brazil, then the left returns, and it returns even worse. And of course, us libertarians are always criticized because we're so idealistic, but we don't do anything in the practical world. And with all this into consideration, I decided to launch my presidential campaign, because I decided not to follow the rules and the laws made by the corrupt people in order for them to stay in power. Because as Ayn Rand teaches us, morality is to live in this reality. And morality should function to make our lives better. So anything that makes our lives better is moral. And if there are laws that are not making Guatemala's life better, I don't need to follow them. Some of those laws are in the Constitution. For example, you have to be 40 years old in order to be president. I'm not 40 yet. I will be if nobody kills me in 2 years. But that's not the most important or difficult obstacle that I have. Although when I launched my first presidential campaign in 2019, and then I relaunched it again this year in 2023, the most important obstacle that I have is that you need to have a political party in order to run. Independent candidacies, as in every banana democracy, are of course forbidden. Problem is, to make a political party in Guatemala, you have to bribe, and you have to bribe a lot. And that means getting involved with the cronies that give you money, but then when you are in power, they're gonna ask for favors. Not only them, but also the unions. So there's no way of making a political party without getting corrupt. So what was my aim? My aim was to present the first and only Libertarian presidential campaign ever existing in Latin America, 100% ecological, because in a country where there's a lot of pollution regarding political campaigns, they put everywhere their faces, they painted stones, they do massive pollution. My campaign was gonna be 100% virtual, with only one video, and I made it for dummies, because this is a country where even the people who know how to read, they don't read one book a year. So you have to make things fast, you have to make things compelling, and I've been studying my whole career how to make Guatemala great for once, And what I found out is that there are systematic things that need to happen in order to take Guatemala away from the problems it has. If you don't do these things, nothing is going to change. Imagine that you are a manager that comes from Silicon Valley, Tesla, Google, Apple, one of these big companies, and they hire you to go to a company that is in absolute bankruptcy. And you analyze this company, and you start studying, and you see that the accountant is stealing money, that the guy or the woman from HR is harassing people, that the general manager never shows up, and that the products that you're producing, let's say it's shoes, they're super bad quality. So this super manager from the Silicon Valley presents to the owners the program in order to make this company running again, not being in bankruptcy. And if you go to these owners, but these owners tell you, well, yeah, but you are telling me about, taking out the guy from HR, hiring a new manager, doing new shoes with new products. I don't want to do any of that. But I want you to save my company. This is how stupid voters behave. They want magical solutions. And when you really analyze why the system is so corrupt and you present a plan, they don't want it. That's why populism is so catchy and so popular, because people want magic solutions. So how I designed the campaign was, there are 5 things that are non-negotiable. If you vote for me, these 5 things go. And then I have other 10 things that people can choose 5. Those 10 things, I don't actually need it in order for Guatemala not to be that corrupt, but I'm just making an invitation to see if Guatemala can stop living in the Middle Ages and start modernizing itself to the 21st century. So if you can join me, I will show you my 5 non-negotiables. The first one is tax decentralization. Like you have 50 states in the United States, we have 22 states in Guatemala called departments. And the logic has been that these states are so poor, so stupid, that they cannot manage their own resources. And then, of course, the nation's capital, Guatemala City, is the one that takes all the loot. What do? Well, like Ayn Rand explains, looters and mooters are concentrated in the capital, and they don't let every single state to flourish. But it is within the states that there is the richness of Guatemala. Hydroelectrics, tourism, agriculture, and different infrastructure from ports, because we're a country that has Pacific and Atlantic as well. We could be richer than Panama, richer than Taiwan. So that's the first one. We need to start treating people like adults, like Deirdre McCloskey says. And treating people like adults is understanding that they are responsible for managing their own money. Without that, you don't have a country. Second of all, I take out the 15 ministries and the 14 ministries, and the 15 secretariats that are from the executive. Excessive bureaucracy that is not needed. And I only integrate them in 4 ministries. One of health and education, so everything that is done in a healthy mind is done for a healthy body, with specific careers and courses that are introduced in the voucher system, taking away the unions that steal 97% of the budget of education and health. There is no way that Guatemala is going to have a healthy and an intellectual population with the current unions that steal all the money. It's like Atlas Shrugged in real life. And then I go to the flat tax. We need one and only tax. If you take all that bureaucracy out, with only one tax, it's more than enough. And you can use the sales tax in a decentralized way. The other thing that I saw is that Guatemala spends 98% of its budget in everything except rule of law. It's stupid. From every quetzal that we pay in taxes, bear in mind, only 20% of the economic active population pays taxes. But from that 20%, 98 cents go to absolutely everything that you can imagine. Unions, bureaucracy, waste, and only 2 cents go to rule of law, security and justice. And we all know, because this is a libertarian audience, that the government is not there to manage economics or education or law through religion. The government is there to manage security and justice, equality, but under the law, the equality that nobody talks about. So what I'm proposing in my government is that instead of only 2 cents going to security and justice, 50 cents go into security and justice. Maybe some of you have heard of Nayib Bukele, El Salvador's president, who is harassing all the criminals. Well, yeah, in order to do that and have jails and rule of law, you need money. Because the problem in Guatemala is you have 11 violent deaths every day, you have 1 robbery every 6 minutes, but you don't have money for rule of law. Everything else, of course, has a lot of money. And demonopolization of the currency in order for Guatemalans to be able to do and purchase and trade with whomever they want. Those are some of my 5 non-negotiables. And then I decided to give people the option of choosing some liberties by their own selves. By doing this, I have a republic, an institutionalized law, where the individual is the most important minority of them all, and their life, liberty, and private property are the only human rights respected, because the others are needs converted into rights. And then I decided to give Guatemalans 10 things from within they would choose 5. And these 5 non-negotiables and the other 5 that they choose, those would be my government plans. So the first negotiable proposal is eliminating poverty and definite empowerment of indigenous women by becoming experts in alternative medicine with the decriminalization of medicinal plants and healing substances such as CBD, psilocybin, DMT, ayahuasca, etc. So the way that I'm presenting this is, listen, we have such few industries that are not corrupted and protected in Guatemala. Why not open new markets for indigenous women, indigenous men in medicines that are already part of our ancestry? These have been proven to treat suicidal thoughts, obsessive compulsive disorders, depression, and other kind of diseases. Then legalization of the same-sex union. But I present it as big business. Compare Costa Rica. The wedding industry in Costa Rica is huge, and they are having a lot of money because of it. I talk also about demonopolization of adoption, especially in a country where the government has burned more than 40 orphans, burned literally, because they have the monopoly on the adoption system in Guatemala. And I present other things that are illegal in my country, but that of course happen. And everything that is illegal, we all know, it's in the hands of the criminals. I am out of time, but thank you so much. If you want to learn more about this presidential campaign, I'm going to be here around. And enjoy Freedom Fest. Thank you. Singing Gloria, Gloria, Gloria.
Gracias por todo. She's amazing. You can meet Gloria later at the reception in the hall. It will be the opening night reception, and you will love it. And I promise you that right now. And if not, you can give me $5. Isn't that a great deal? Oh my gosh, I'm going to be rich. This is so much fun. All right, so many of you wonder two things. One, why can't we have more innovation in this country? It's because government is too big and stifles innovation at every turn. I think you know that. The other thing you worry about, and I know this because there are a lot of Ayn Rand fans in the audience in attendance, it's absolutely right. You say to yourself, what if Atlas shrugs? Well, let me tell you, our next guest is the Chief Innovation Officer at Atlas, and he will make sure we have innovation and Atlas will never shrug. Please put your hands together for Dr. Lyle Swim. Let's do it.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you are having a great time here at Freedom Fest. Gloria is a tough act to follow, so I'll try to keep the momentum going. I am here to announce our 2023 North American Templeton Liberty Award for North America. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Atlas Network. We are a global network of more than 550 organizations around the world that are trying to secure freedom, reduce corruption, secure the rule of law all over the world. And these partners are diligent. You're going to hear from Enes in a little while. In Turkey, we actually have several partners working to make Turkey more free. But it's going on all around the world. And I'm excited to be a part of that, group. Let me tell you a little bit about the Templeton Freedom Award Prize. Atlas Network's Regional Liberty Awards recognize think tanks and advocacy groups who have made a significant contribution to the understanding of liberty around the globe. Every year, the awards honor partners' work in advancing prosperity, innovation, human dignity, and freedom in their communities. The Templeton Freedom Award Prize program awards $270,000 a year to groups around the globe who have made that significant contribution and have had an impact on millions and millions of lives to help them achieve their dreams, to live in greater prosperity, with greater dignity, and with more freedom. Now, for our award winner for 2023, we are here to recognize the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. Let me just share a little bit of what they've been able to accomplish with their project, specifically their litigation work. Everybody knows you need a good attorney, and they've been tremendous. Their record to date, 23 cases won, 38 campus policies reformed impacting tens of thousands of lives of students and professors, and nearly $3 million in damages and fees recouped for those who have been harmed by those policies. In addition, they've filed 76 amicus briefs that are working their way through the courts and are working to strengthen the ability for individuals to express, particularly on college campuses, their opinions without being harassed, censored, or canceled. So please join me in welcoming to the stage to accept the award in behalf of FIRE, Nico Perino.
You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart.
See, you nailed it. He won! That is the biggest freedom prize in the world, and you saw it just change hands. Dr. Lyle, where's his stethoscope? All right, who here loves precious metals? Because we have a party for you. I don't know about you, but I love gold and silver, of course. And I'm always interested to hear what our next speaker has in store for us, because he serves as a partner and director of investor relations for Treasure Investments Corporation, and he's a busy mother trucker. He is the CEO and chairman of Nevada Mining Company, former president of the American Cancer Society in Wisconsin, a wonderful, hearty, corn-fed state, and he has raised over $400 million as president of the National Community Foundation, and he has some incredible things to show you and tell you about, especially if you like precious metals and you want to get rich. So let us hear it for Michael Shepard.
Mambo, mambo italiano, hey mambo, mambo italiano, hey Jojo, you mixed up Siciliano.
I got to follow that. That's a tough act. Thank you for coming. This is kind of old home week. It's like a reunion, a family reunion or high school reunion. To see all the familiar faces. We've been coming for so many years. And it's nice to even be in Memphis. Even though I'm from Nashville, I'm a little bit biased. And what Kennedy said was true, but all of you have been involved in fundraising from time to time, and you know fundraising is not fun. But if you have to do it, I've never had this much fun in doing it with live auctions. And back in 1998, when I was teaching estate planning seminars, I had the privilege and the honor of meeting Mark Russo, and he developed the vision and the idea to provide fine art sculptures to charities and split 50-50 as a business. Take all the shipping, all the risk, all the liabilities, make it easy for the charities to make a lot of money. And of course, the people who are there want to devote some of their money to the cause that they love anyway. And we've been doing that since 1998. A couple of years ago, we decided, and I'm an investor in the company and a business partner, but not an employee, so I have a little bit more liberty to be a bit more objective. But of all the things that I have done in my career, and I think I've been investing since I was 10 years old, and I'm going to be 78 in September. I started selling newspapers at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, and started collecting coins. Then you could get silver dollars and all kinds of things, as you know. But this particular company, Treasure Investments, privately held, is showing at this show, and has been for years, has decided to take the company public. I went to the New York Stock Exchange in February and met with the investment bankers and the market makers, and this is not the time to take a company public. You guys know that better than me. But they said when the time is right, and it will be, then we want to represent you. So I'm excited about that as an investor, of course, and for our 290 shareholders. Let me tell you a little bit about this company. And think about it from an IPO perspective. How many companies do you know that before they go public are profitable and virtually free of debt? This is a fine art company, which is an alternative investment. But for the last 5 years, investments in fine art have beaten the S&P 500 by 18% on average every year. Excuse me. And so our vision is to share that with as many people as we possibly can. Many of you know or have heard of Helen Keller. Show of hands. Most of you. Then you know that she was mute and deaf and blind. And later on in life, they even did a movie about her. She learned to speak. I think the movie was called The Miracle Worker. And she was being interviewed by the BBC, and the brash young reporter said, "I can't think of anything that would be worse than being blind, Miss Keller." And she was a cool lady. And she said, "Well, young feller, there is something worse than being blind. It's having sight with no vision." And that's true. So I would like to, the chairman of the board and our executive staff would like to share our vision with you. We're in booth 600 AB, the one with all the sculptures that you'll see. And we have a workshop Friday at 2:30. And we have a dinner after the VIP reception Thursday with Mike Rowe. We'll have a dinner and a video presentation, and we would invite you, of course, to come. Just stop by the booth, and you'll be able to pick up your tickets. This company was even profitable during the pandemic. Hard to believe when you have 6 profit centers, but we have 103 galleries across America, and they were all shut down. All the live auctions, we do about 100, 150 a year, were all shut down. Trade shows, closed. But we do monuments. A monument is defined as a life size plus 20%. And we were able to sell those to banks, Ritz-Carlton, hotels, Sheraton, and such, and even car washes. Monument grizzly bears. That's amazing. And now we're experiencing exponential growth. I had the honor and the privilege, November of 2021, still COVID, borrowing a phrase from Charles Dickens, The Tale of Two Cities. It was the worst trip of my life, and yet became the best trip of my life, because I represented Treasure Investments and negotiated a worldwide exclusive partnership with Ferdinando Marinelli Foundry and Galleria, over 200 years old. Let me share with you. In 1932, Pope Pius XII sensed war was coming, and he wanted to protect the entire Vatican collection. Very wise. So he invited Marinelli to come in and take what they call posthumous originals, not reproductions, posthumous originals, molds from the actual marble statues, 72 of them in the entire Vatican collection. And they stored them away just in case. We were able to now gain the ability and the partnership to create a posthumous original, one and one only, the first, the last, and the only, Michelangelo's Pietà, which we unveiled at this show because it's our favorite, because you are our favorite, this pure silver Pietà, 333 ounces. This year, at the dinner, we'll unveil our second piece. It's a smaller piece. It's also by Michelangelo. It's called The Battle of the Centaurs. Particularly special to Michelangelo. Why? It's the only piece in his entire lifetime that he kept and stored in the Casa Barante, which is the house of Michelangelo in Florence, Italy. And you're going to get a chance to take a picture of it and see it. Can't touch it, but you can sure get close to it. We had just earlier today, Steve Forbes and Rocco came over and gave him a preview, as he well deserves. He unveiled it with us last year. So I invite you to catch our vision. You're talking about an opportunity that we want to discuss with you in greater detail to get yourself part of fine art investments. You'll meet our chairman of the board and our true visionary, Mark Russo, there as well. As traditional, those of you who have been there for many years know, I like to leave you with a blessing because you deserve it. I know the thoughts that I have for you, declares the Lord. And there are plans to prosper you and to keep you from harm and to give you a hope and a future. Thank you.
Hey mambo, mambo italiano. Hey mambo, mambo italiano. Hey Jojo, funky Siciliano.
Keep going. 5, 6, 7, 8. Nope, they never listen. Thank you, Michael Shepard. Thank you, everyone. How we doing? Day one. The fun has begun. Yeah. And it's about to get amazing. This is what I have been looking forward to, along with all the people that we have heard. Two of my very favorite people are about to have a wonderful, engaging discussion. You won't believe what you hear. And Sean Tima is the Chief Operating Officer for Young Americans for Liberty. And they do incredible work with their outreach for candidates, knocking on doors, millions of doors throughout the country, and they get candidates, liberty-minded candidates elected across the land. And they invest in people. They find candidates who are really committed to the cause and who are going to do the work, because those are the people who change elections, and they direct the narrative, and we want that narrative to be centered in liberty. So, and he's going to introduce who he's going to introduce. He's going to talk to you because he is so good. He is a master of various mediums. And Revolution 2023, if you're having so much fun at Freedom Fest, you want to take the show on the road to Florida next month, then head to Orlando for Revolution 2023. That is Young Americans for Liberty convention, and you can meet young people, like real-life American young people, and pinch them. They love that. Those Gen Zers, yeah. And then use your iPhone with your thumbs. They love that too. I'm just kidding. They'll make fun of you. I don't know why. So let's have a warm, freedom-centered welcome for Sean Tima.
Best shot. Why don't you hit me with your best shot?
All right. How we feeling this evening? Forgive me if Kennedy asked you folks this already, but show of hands, who is your first Freedom Fest? All right, we got a lot of newcomers in the room. This is a conference like no other, and I'm so grateful to the Scousins and their team for organizing this year after year. It's world class. Let's give a round of applause to the Scousins, will you? And keep that applause going for Kennedy. She's working all week. Fantastic MC. And keep it going a little bit longer for the band. Aren't they great? So as Kennedy mentioned, I'm with Young Americans for Liberty. We were formed out of Students for Ron Paul in 2008. And we are actively working with college students across the country to not only educate them on the ideas of freedom, but to get out there, take real action, knock on doors, elect people across the country to the state level, because that's where you can really make an impact. And we're going to free this country state by state, changing policy by policy, thanks to these young kids getting out there, knocking on doors. We've elected over 325 state representatives across the country. If anyone in the audience, thank you. If anyone in the audience is thinking about running for state office, please come find me, come find our booth later with Elvis, Cardboard Elvis, and we'd love to talk to you. So, before I introduce this next speaker, I just want to talk about why it's important professionally and personally to me to be having this conversation with him. I believe he serves as a role model for college students across the country because if nothing else, he is standing up and speaking out for what he believes in, in the threat of death. Right? How much more can you be? How much fear can you get? These college students across the country, they're afraid to speak out on their campus for fear of retribution from their professors or being canceled. And this guy shows them if you have the courage, then people will stand up and support you. On a personal note, it's important that I speak with our next speaker because of my grandfather. My grandfather serves as a great source of inspiration for me. He didn't start a YAL chapter on his campus, but he did be very active about 90 miles off the coast of Florida when he was about my age, the University of Havana. And he stood up and he spoke out against tyranny in Cuba, and as a result was imprisoned not just by the Batista regime, but also by the Castro regime. He escaped, he was able to come to this country, he was able to get his family out of there, and he was one of the greatest patriots I knew, so appreciative of the freedoms we have here and how quickly they can be taken away. And he passed away recently, but I think he would be incredibly proud to have spoken with this next speaker and to see him, get his message out there. And so this next speaker is a former NBA player, played for 5 different teams, and he lost his career in the NBA because he stood up for what he believed in, speaking out against the Turkish government and the Chinese government. He's a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He has been working the circuit. He has been getting his message out there, and we're going to have a great conversation. Please bring up Enes Freedom Cantor to the stage.
Hit me with your best shot. Why don't you hit me with your best shot? Hit me with your best shot. Right away.
Now, before we get started, I just want to say as well, I want to praise FreedomFest for their commitment to all sorts of diversity, not just of race, creed, of nationality, but also of height. Take a look at this.
Right?
Look at this. This is what true tolerance looks like, folks.
Yes.
So thank you to the Scousins for that. So Enes, there's so much we can talk about in the time that we have. I mentioned how you have been very vocal against the Turkish government. This is something you've been doing for a long time, and you have sacrificed so much to speak out, for what you believe in. How did this all get started for you? What inspired you to start being an activist?
First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me. I don't know if you guys are NBA fans, the Knicks fans, the Jazz fans, no? The Celtics fans? Some
right here,
in the back. Okay, anyway, so let's get to the topic. But, I think it all started actually back in when I was 9 years old. So I remember, I'm gonna give you guys an example of my country, Turkey. So if you're a kid growing up in Turkey, it's a very different and difficult environment. If you're a politician in Turkey and if you want to be elected again, you do 2 things. You attack America and you attack Israel. So just because of the base is so uneducated, they're like, wow, look at our leader. He's standing tall against America. He's standing tall against Israel. He's standing tall against Christian people, right? And unfortunately, people vote for him for that reason. So I'm 9 years old, and I went downstairs to play with my friends. And my friends, that they're not even teenagers, they were burning American flags. They were burning Israeli flags. They were breaking crosses. And I was like, guys, what are you doing? They said, well, that's what we see on TV. And I remember they gave me a flag to burn it. It was an American flag. So they gave me the flag. They gave me the lighter. And I said, burn it. And I looked at the flag. I looked at the lighter. I was like, this is not the right way to do it. So I threw it down. I ran upstairs to my mom. I was like, Mom, My friends are telling me to hate America. They're telling me to hate Christians. They're telling me to hate Jewish people, hate Israel. What do I do? My mom is like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but do not hate anyone before you meet him. So, yeah, go ahead. So that day, right? That day, I give a promise to my mom. I was like, I promise I'm not going to hate anyone before I meet him. So, literally 8 years later, the environment that I was growing up in was getting so toxic. My dad is like, you know what? It's time for you to get the best education, and you need to go to America. So I remember I'm 17 years old, and I am coming to America for the first time, and my flight is about to land. And I'm so excited but nervous at the same time. I landed. I remember my first practice with my teammates. Two of my teammates who were American and Christian wanted to talk to me. I got so nervous, I turned around and left the locker room because I didn't know what they were going to try to say. And then I remembered the promise to my mom. I turned around and started talking to them, and they're like, well, you came from Turkey. If you want to go to a mosque, we know that you're Muslim. If you want to go get some halal food, we can take you to some restaurants. And I was like, that's interesting, And I remember meeting with one of my friends who was Jewish. She invited me over for a Shabbat dinner. And I immediately said, of course not. I'm not going to come to a Shabbat dinner. And then again, I remember the promise to my mom. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll be there. So before I went to her house, I actually called one of my Turkish friends who lives in America. I was like, if you don't hear from me for the next 2 hours, call the police. Because I just didn't know what to expect. Anyway, so I went to her house. It was unbelievable. The food was amazing. Some of the dances that they do, it's like the same thing. Some of the music and every culture was so similar. Then I was going back to my place after the dinner. I started to think, I'm like, there are millions of kids in Middle East growing up anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-Christian just because of the politicians, And I was like, we gotta do something about it. And then, I've been here since 2009, and I can proudly say that, I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about the story of it too. I can proudly say that I'm finally became a citizen of this beautiful country 2 years ago. It was an unbelievable moment.
Awesome.
It was probably the most proudest moment in my life, but that's pretty much how everything started.
Fantastic. And when you were in the NBA, you weren't quiet. You were very vocal about your opposition to the Turkish government and Erdogan. Tell us more specifically about your criticisms of Erdogan and of what's going on in Turkey for those who may not be familiar.
Turkey once was obviously the bridge of Islam and West. But when Erdogan came into power, obviously just because of all the human rights violations and political prisoners and how Erdogan is using his power, Erdogan's regime using his power to abuse Interpol system and stuff, that bridge is gone, So I remember my third year in the league, I started to talk about the problems that are happening in Turkey, and because of the platform, every time I say something, it was becoming a conversation. So the more the news outlets actually started to give me a platform, I started to talk about it, and those things affected me and my family. My dad, was a scientist. They fired him. My sister went to medical school for 6 years, and actually she still cannot find a job. I think the saddest one was my little brother because, he wanted to be like his big brother and play in NBA and stuff, but he was getting kicked out of every team because of the same last name. So they were getting affected so much, they had to put a statement out there and said, we are disowning Enes. The Turkish government didn't believe that. They sent police to my house in Turkey. They raided the whole house, and they took every electronics away, phones, computers, laptops, iPads, because they wanted to see if I am still in contact with my family or not. They couldn't find no evidence, but they still took my dad in jail for a while. But we put so much pressure from here to Turkey, they had to let him go. And then they revoked my passport. They put my name on Interpol list. I mean, in their eyes, I'm an international criminal. Recently, I don't know if you guys seen it or not, but they actually put a bounty on my head. So I can only go to 29 countries in the world because some of the other countries that if I ever travel, then I would be deported back to Turkey, you know? So it's been a very difficult experience to just dealing with a dictatorship like that. So for sure it's interesting.
Yeah, a $500,000 bounty, right?
Yeah.
The threat of imprisonment, all for simply speaking freely, for criticizing.
Exactly. So that's what I was like trying to tell some of my friends here. Like, you know, I'm sure, I mean, some of my teammates especially, they love to like criticize America, which I'm not saying we're perfect, but many of them calls it trash. Many of them say so many crazy things about America, but I'm like, listen, let's some of those countries out there, you will be hanged, you know? So I just hope that they can understand how blessed they are to be in this country like that.
Yeah, it was only recently there was a WNBA player, right? And the irony of that, a WNBA player speaking out against America when we had a WNBA player imprisoned and detained indefinitely in Russia. But she called America trash. She made some comments, and I believe you offered her a first-class ticket to any totalitarian regime that she wants to visit. So that's very generous.
Not only her, like some of my teammates, I remember I was in a locker room and having a conversation with some of my teammates, and they were like, oh my God, America is so bad, America is trash, and blah, blah. I was like, guys, listen, the season is about to be over. And when the season over, I will buy your ticket. It's a first class, don't worry. And we go to some of these countries out there like China, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, like Venezuela, like Cuba, like Turkey, right? And forget about calling them trash. Please, I would like to see you criticize them. You and your family member will be in jail and tortured to death. You know, so sometimes people don't understand because they don't travel enough. So sometimes they don't understand that, you know, how good we have it in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, I believe, 29 countries out of the vast majority you can't go to because of the threats. And I believe that the FBI at one point even gave you a panic button when you were traveling around for the NBA. You know, is this something that you think about on a daily basis? Do you ever get rattled, or does this motivate you?
I mean, it does motivate me first because like that shows that how much they actually scared of me, you know. But the second thing is, I mean, it does feel a little weird to live with a panic button next to your bed, or knowing that you have a bounty on your head and you could get killed in any day and stuff. And every place you have to go, you have to get in touch with the FBI and stuff. So it is little a different kind of style of life. But hey, it is what it is. I'm trying to get used to it.
Yeah. If nothing else from this conversation with Mr. Freedom, take a moment to appreciate that right now we can all take out our phone, go on the internet, and say some equivalent of Joe Biden is senile, or Trump's a big fat liar, and we won't have a bounty over our head. Exactly. I mean, it's the little things. It's the freedom of speech that matters. So to shift gears a little bit, we've talked about Turkey and your opposition there and the consequences that you faced from that government. The NBA supported you throughout all of that. They had your back, is my understanding. But then you started talking about a different authoritarian regime. It was about 2019 when there were protests in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. And some would say, I'm not saying it, but some people would say the greatest player of all time, LeBron James, started saying, stop talking about Hong Kong. You don't know what you're talking about. And you went up there and you said, no, I think that we should stand up for freedom over there and call out the human rights abuses in China. Yeah. What happened then?
Yeah, so it all actually started with a basketball camp. So I'm in New York doing a basketball camp with kids. I remember after the basketball camp, all the kids lined up and taking a picture with me and one-on-one and stuff. I remember I took a picture with this kid, and his parent called me out in front of everybody and said, how can you call yourself a human rights activist when your Muslim brothers and sisters are getting tortured and raped every day in concentration camp in China? I'm still smiling for the camera. I turned around to that parent. I was like, I promise I'm going to get back to you. So I went back to my hotel. I started to study about what's going on. And obviously on the internet, you can find all kind of news. You don't know which one you can trust or not. So I called my manager. I was like, I need you to find me a concentration camp survivor. So he found me one. It was a lady, and we sit down. We had a 1-hour conversation, and she was telling me about all the torture methods and all the forced sterilization and abortioning. I'm sorry, but gang raping and stuff, And I was like, you got me. I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to help you. What can I do for you? She said, nothing. I was like, what do you mean nothing? I was like, so we just had this 1-hour conversation for no reason? She said, no. She said, I live in America. I live a good life here. I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I have a freedom. Help those 2-3 million Uyghurs who are in concentration camp getting tortured and raped every day. So at that moment, I was like, you know what? I don't care what it takes. I'm going to stand up for these innocent people. So I wanted to do it in a very unique way, because I remember when I was a kid, whenever I watched an NBA game, the first thing I was watching was the shoes. I mean, what color they are, what brand it is, if they're comfortable. And the next day I was telling my dad, please buy those shoes for me. I mean, everybody here loves shoes, right? You cannot show me one person here that doesn't love shoes. So I came up with this idea. I was like, let's reach out to these artists around the world and who's been oppressed by their government, and let's put all the struggles, all the pain, whatever they've been through on non-slave labor shoes, and we're gonna go out there and play basketball. And there was no rule against it, because 3 years ago, 2020, when they took us in an NBA bubble, it was during the protests. All the players were putting on their shoes Black Lives Matter, Black Revolution, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I was like, fine, there is no rule against it. So my first topic was Free Tibet, right? It's a human rights issue, Free Tibet. So I created the shoes. I went out there. I was playing for the Celtics. Our first game was against New York Knicks, opening night, our biggest rivalry, at Madison Square Garden. So I put the shoes on. I went out there and started warming up. And 1 minute before the game started, two gentlemen from the Celtics, they work for the NBA, came to me and said, take your shoes off. I was like, excuse me? They said, you gotta take your shoes off because your shoes has been getting so much attention internationally. Obviously, it was from China. They said, you gotta take them off. You know, it was the perfect moment for me because I was just getting ready for my citizenship test. Every day I was studying. So I closed my eyes. I was like, okay, there are 27 amendments. My first amendment, freedom of speech. I turned around and said, no, I'm not taking them off. So they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't care even if I get fined. I'm not taking them off. They said, we're not talking about getting fined. We're talking about getting banned. So they were literally threatening me to get banned. Anyway, I played 0 minutes first half. I went back to my locker room. I looked at my phone. There was thousands of notifications. I clicked on the one that my manager sent me. He said, every Boston Celtics game is banned in China. It took them 24 minutes to ban every game in television. Think about it. First quarter, 12 minutes. Second quarter, 12 minutes. Anyway, the game ended. I played 0 minutes, which I played every game before that. I played 0 minutes, and obviously we lost the game. We did lost the game very, very bad. Anyway, so after the game, I told my manager there was a media storm. We were getting media from all over the world. I was like, I don't want to do no media. I don't want because I didn't want my teammate to think that I'm doing that for attention. So after the game, NBPA called me, the Player Association, which I give thousands of dollars every year to protect my rights against the NBA. They said, listen, NBA has been pressuring us. You can never wear those shoes ever again. I talk about the problems that are happening in Turkey for the last 10 years. All I got was support. I talk about the problems that are happening in China. My phone was ringing once every hour. They were telling me you cannot wear those shoes ever again. So they pressured me so much, I was like, you know what? I promise I'm not going to wear Free Tibet shoes ever again. They said, promise? I said, promise. We hang up the phone. So the next game, I wore Free Uyghur shoes. So they called me after the game, right? They called me after the game. They said, you're a liar. You lied to us. I was like, hold on a second. First of all, I never lied to you. I never said I'm not going to wear Free Uyghur shoes. I just said I'm just not going to wear Free Tibet shoes. So at that moment, they understand that they're not going to be able to make me apologize from the Chinese government or to make me my tweet down and just say, sorry, I didn't mean blah, blah, whatever. So after the third game, one of my teammates walked up to me and said, you know this is your last year in NBA, right? You criticized China, You criticize Nike, especially Nike, because Nike, I don't know if you guys wearing Nikes, and if you are, just take them off and throw it away.
The trash is right over there.
Trash is right over there. Because look at this hypocrisy. Nike, the biggest sponsor of the NBA, they stand with Black Lives Matter in this country. They stand with LGBTQ community. They stand with no Asian hate. They stand with Latino community. But everybody knows about the sweatshops and, slave laborers. So I was like, you know what? You guys are hypocrites. I'm going to expose you too. So my teammates said, if you criticize Nike, if you criticize China, you will be done playing basketball. Have fun, smile. I hope we win a championship, but you're never going to get a contract ever again. I was like, sure. February came, and I got released. Released means blackballed. Released means fired. And since then, it was over. It's been almost 2 years now. The saddest thing was, I played 11 years in NBA. I had hundreds of teammates, hundreds of coaches, so many people from the NBA office. Not one of them texted me. Not one of them called me and said, hey man, good luck with whatever you're coming to your way next. Good luck with this, because they did not want me to mention their name. Because if I ever do in an interview, all their contract, all their endorsement deals, jerseys will be canceled. When I did the whole China thing was a perfect moment, because I did it right before the Beijing Olympics. People call it the genocide games. I forget about the NBA. I try to reach out to everybody. NFL, MLB, MLS, NHL, WWE. I even try to reach out to Olympians. I was like, do not become part of the propaganda. They all said the same thing. They said, listen, man, I think what you're doing is so amazing, so inspirational. Keep doing what you're doing. We love you, we support you, but we just cannot do it out loud. I said, why? They said, well, we have shoe deals, endorsement deals. We want to get another contract. I asked them one simple question. I was like, put yourself in their shoes. If your mother, if your sister, if your daughter was in those concentration camps getting tortured and raped every day, would you still pick money and business over your morals, values, and principles? They usually turn around and leave the room, literally. So, since then, I don't consider myself a retired player, because I have not retired yet. I still work out and stuff. But yeah, that's what happened.
And the commissioner, Adam Silver, right, he's gone on the record and said some version of, oh, well, you're not in the NBA, not because of anything you said, nothing to do with that. I'm going to bore you with some numbers really quick. There's been about 5,000 people who have ever played a game in the NBA. Only about 40 of them have ever had multiple games where they've scored 20 points and secured 20 rebounds in any game, which is an incredibly impressive feat. This guy's one of those people. He's done it at least 10 times, right? He's not in the NBA, not because he can't play. He's in the NBA because they're choosing profits over people, and they're not backing down from China. So I'm sorry they're wimps, man. I'm sorry they're not backing down.
I know, man. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about, this country, and congratulations again on your citizenship and being a part of it. Several folks... You got a home here if you don't have a home in the NBA, I'll tell you that. Several folks have asked you, and you've deferred every time. You say you're not sure yet, but they've said, hey, are you going to run for office? We need your voice. Do you have an answer to that question today for this crowd?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say I remember I was a green card holder, and I did this interview and said, hey, in 5 years I'm going to become an American citizen. I'm so excited, and the host said, you don't have to wait 5 years. If you marry with an American woman, it's only 3 years. I was like, oh, I didn't know. The next day, I was getting so much DMs from all over America. It was people were sending me wild pictures. Anyway, I don't want to talk about those. But America has been so good to me, because I remember people keep talking about me losing my career in NBA, but I stand up for the things that are happening in Turkey. I lost my family. So comparing to losing my career, that's literally like nothing, But America has been so good to me, and I just cannot thank every American that ever lived in this country, because, from day one, they opened their arms, they gave me a warm welcome, and now every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, I get so many DMs and say, hey man, we are your family now. You can come to our house. You can celebrate the Thanksgiving with us. You can celebrate Christmas with us. And I have been going to some of my friends' house to learn about Christmas, to learn about Thanksgiving, to learn about July 4th, because Independence Day, to me, I remember my first year, my first few years in America, all I thought was it was just amazing barbecue and just fireworks, you know? Then you learn about what that day really means to every Americans out there. So every time now I go to the Hill to talk about all the human rights violations and stuff, people are from both parties actually say, hey man, like, what are you doing? Stop wasting your time. Just bring your voice to the Congress, to the Senate, and just go out there and just talk about what's more important. So yes, when the time is right, I am thinking about running. I hope I got your support.
You got about 1,000 donors in the room. But
I love it. No, I love it. No, because we need strong voices who actually loves America and tell people that, you know, not taking your freedom for granted and how blessed and lucky to be in a country like this. So
awesome. We're running out of time. I could ask you a million more questions. I'll ask you two at once.
All right.
First is, you know, what advice would you have to young people? The second is, would you do anything that you've done in terms of your activism differently? Do you have any regrets in standing up for what you believe in?
I think my one advice to young people out there is that people need to understand, you know, we need to leave our differences on the table and try to find what we have in common. Because we only have one America and we only have one world. So we need to make this world better together. You know, till one of those crazy billionaires find another planet to live, this world is what we have. So we need to make this country, we need to make this world better together. And that's the amazing thing about America. You can be Jewish, you can be Muslim, you can be Christian, you can be Mormon, you can be whoever you are. You can be white, black, Democrat, Republican, whoever you are, you know, you can peacefully live in this country. So my one advice to all these young kids out there is just not take your freedom for granted and just smile.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of your activism, I mean, thinking back, you know, you
yeah, any
sacrificed
regrets?
so much.
Good question. Any regrets? I mean, I had a conversation with my manager, and I was like, well, he said, you know, you could have played another like 6 years in the league, and that's like with endorsement deals and contracts, that's close to like $50 to $60 million. And you lost your career now. You lost your family now. Like, what are you doing? I was like, you know what? You know, someone had to do it. Forget about the NBA. Literally, like, you look at Hollywood, you look at big tech, you look at academias, you look at farmland, some of the Congress and local Congresses. I started to ask that question to myself. We keep talking about our freedom in this country, but literally, many of it is pretty much run by the biggest dictatorship in the world, China. I'm asking this question to you guys. How can the biggest dictatorship in the world can control a 100% American-made company like NBA, like Hollywood, and fire a U.S. citizen? You know, that's just very interesting. That's just very bizarre. So we should not take our freedom for granted, and we have to stand strong for it.
I agree, and Enes, thank you so much for being here, for fighting your fight, for having courage to speak up. This guy's going to be speaking all day tomorrow in breakout sessions, so you haven't seen the end of him.
I want to say I appreciate you all, man. Definitely means a lot. Every time I see a crowd like this, every time I see freedom lovers or like you guys, it gives me so much hope and motivation to fight. So I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Final round of applause for Enes.
Good?
Man.
There you go, man.
Good? Yeah. I think we got this one.
Oh my God, I have popcorn juice all over my script. See, wasn't that incredible? You got to see Enes Freedom, the man who loves freedom so much, he changed his name to Freedom. He and Shantima were a great duo. So let's hear it again for them because that was amazing. Those are the kind of discussions that we need to have. So I told you we had some presidential candidates in the House, and right now, here's someone who's really taken the race by storm. One of the most interesting people, but also arguably the hardest working presidential candidate I have seen in the years that I have been covering presidential politics. And I was on the 96 Hours to Victory tour with Bob Dole in 1996. And that man did not sleep. And when I say 96 hours, it was 4 days straight, stop after stop after stop. And he was tireless. But Vivek has one of the most amazing presidential strategies of any candidate in the race. Because, and I don't know if you saw the viral video of the woman who was screaming at him at an event he was holding, but they were trying to kick her out. Security was trying to kick her out of the building. And he was like, no, stop. I want to hear what she has to say. And he said, if we're going to talk about free speech and if we're going to honor free speech, I don't have to agree with you. I may not agree with you on much, but I want to hear your story. And the woman was in tears. And she talked to him. And that's what he's doing. He's talking to people, and even people who've never been interested in politics. And I told him this on Fox not long ago, that my uncle, who's never donated to a political campaign ever in his 75 years on this planet, said that he is strongly considering making a donation to Vivek's presidential campaign because he listens, he's so smart. He started Strive Asset Management in the great state of Ohio. He is a best-selling author, Woke Inc. and Nation of Victims, 2 of his books, which he's a great writer. That'll give you a foundation for his message, but who the hell am I to talk about it? Let's welcome him to the stage, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Taking care of business every day. Taking care of business and working every day. Come on.
It's good to be here at FreedomFest, guys. Love being here with my freedom-loving Americans. This is great. Well, I know many of you, but many of you are seeing me for the first time, so I'll tell you a word about myself. First thing people ask me is, how the heck do I pronounce your name? It's Vivek. It rhymes with cake. I found that most people like cake, so we've gone with that one. I'll tell you, my parents came to this country a little over 40 years ago with almost no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies, from Roivant, the biotech company that I built that developed life-saving medicines, to Strive, which competes against BlackRock today. And I did it while marrying my wife, who's a surgeon. We brought 2 sons into this world. We follow our faith. That's the American dream. And I'm running for president because I am worried that that American dream will not exist for the next generation of Americans unless we step up and do something to preserve it. We're in the middle today of a national identity crisis. Faith, patriotism, hard work, family. These things have disappeared, only to be replaced by new secular religions in America. Wokeism, gender ideology, climatism, COVIDism, depression, anxiety, drug usage, suicide. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And I'll tell you this as a member of my generation. I'm a millennial. I'm the first millennial ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll tell you something about us millennials. I think it's true of all of us. It's definitely true of people my age and younger in this country. We are hungry for a cause. We are hungry for purpose and meaning and identity at a time in our national history when the things that used to fill that void, belief in country, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. That leaves a black hole of a vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. That's what's going on in America today. And what I see in the Republican Party, it's what I'm running in as Republican candidate for president, is a movement that has been pretty good at pointing out the problem one at a time. We've always been running from something. But I think that now is our moment to level up and to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be an American today. That is the question that we ought to answer. Yeah, somebody my age, that question, what does it mean to be an American? You get a blank stare in response. It's like a deer in the headlights moment. That is the question for us now, what it means to be an American today. To me, it means we believe in the ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. Ideals like meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence, that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why we should end race-based affirmative action in every sphere of American life. It means we believe, yes, in the rule of law, that if you're like my parents, you do get to come to this country legally through the front door. They followed the rules. They paid their taxes. They did their part. But it also means that your first act of entering this country cannot break the law, because that is what it means to be a nation founded on the rule of law. It means we believe in free speech and open debate, that we don't have a government in this country that uses technology companies to do through the back door what government could not silence through the front door under the Constitution. We believe in free speech. That is what makes us American. It means we believe the people who we elect to run the government, Democrat, Republican, I don't care. The people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who at least actually run the government, not this managerial bureaucracy that actually runs the show today. That's what I've said. If you put me in that White House as your president and I cannot collect a paycheck from you all, the taxpayers, for more than 8 years, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of those civil service protections. That's how we drive change. And if there's a government agency that should not exist, I will not make the false promise of telling you that I'll reform that agency. That is a lie. That administrative state, it cannot be reformed. But when an agency should not exist, from the U.S. Department of Education to the FBI, to the IRS, to the ATF, I will not just pledge to reform that agency. We will go in and shut it down. That is how we restore 3 branches of government, not 4 in this country. See, these are not Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. These are not black ideas or white ideas. These are fundamentally American ideals that we fought a revolution in 1776 to secure. That is what it means to be an American. We believe in those 1776 ideals. Let me tell you what's happened in our country today. The best measure of the health of our American civic fabric, American democracy, is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. Right now, we are doing poorly on that metric. We got to close that gap by more of us starting to have the courage to actually speak the truth in the open again. That is what this campaign is about. We're about speaking the truth without apology. That is what we do as Americans. I go around, we will speak the truth. I will share with you my true beliefs. God is real. There are 2 genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the best known form of governance to mankind. Capitalism is the best system known to man to lift people up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government in this country, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We stand up for the truth. We do not back down from the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. I'll tell you, I don't think about even winning the election. That's just a milestone along the way. I think about what I want to be telling you all in January of 2033 when I leave that office. My kids will be not even in high school yet, okay? So we'll be moving on to a new phase of life by then. I don't believe in false promises. There's a lot that the president needs to rely on hundreds of people in Congress to be able to do. This is the stuff of false promises. But there's a few things that I can tell you that I know as President of the United States I'll be able to get done. The first of those is in January of 2033. We will once again in this country have 3 co-equal branches of government rather than an unconstitutional 4th branch of government. We will have reduced the federal employee headcount by over 75% so that once again the people we elect to run the government will be the ones who actually run the government. I will tell you in January 2033 that we are no longer dependent on our enemy, Communist China, for the way that we actually live our lives. The shoes on our feet to the phones in our pockets, we will not be dependent on an adversary for the way we actually live in this country. That's what it means to say that if you're the CCP, you will not deputize our companies, or for that matter, the NBA, as we just heard from Enes, to be able to advance your political agendas in this country. That is what it means to be sovereign as the United States of America. We'll be growing at 4+% GDP growth again in this country. It's almost as though we've forgotten that economic growth is itself our best way forward. How do we get there? We drill, we frack, we burn coal, we embrace nuclear energy. We stop paying people to stay at home instead of actually getting people back to work. We reform the U.S. Federal Reserve, restoring the stability of the dollar as the sole mandate for the U.S. Fed. We shut down most of the regulations that shackle businesses across this country. That's how we revive economic growth. And what I've found in this country, growing up here for the last 37 years, is that we tend to be more proud of our country when we're making more money in that country. And it will be my job as the young guy in this race and who leads this country to make sure that the next generation of Americans is actually once again proud to be American. That is something we have missed for a long time to come, but we can give that to our next generation. I tell you, I grew up into a generation where we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences. So much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. I believe it deep in my bones that those ideals still exist. I believe it that we together can actually work together to revive them. Yes, we are going through hard times in this country. But I'll tell you the same thing that I tell to college campuses as I travel this country. Those are left-leaning audiences. This audience may lean a different way, but the message is the same. Our hardship is not a choice. Hardship is something that happens to us in life. But victimhood is a choice. And hardship is not the same thing as victimhood. We don't choose victimhood, we choose the other thing. That is what makes us American. E pluribus unum, we say for a reason. It means from many, one. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War, that is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we together will revive to save this great nation. Thank you all. Love being here at Freedom Fest. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless our United States. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Taking care of business every day. Taking care of business every way. Taking care of business, it's alright. Taking care of business, he's working overtime. Come on, come on.
Let's hear it for the band. Woo! Did you love it? Did you love Vivek? Were you electrified? This is only day one. This is only our first session. We have so much more to go. And I've got several announcements in just a little bit. You guys are all staying, right? You're just finding your seats? That's awesome. I'm so happy to see you. You guys just got here and you're eager. And you all, anyone who leaves right now has to give me $5. Did you guys not hear the rule? Okay. So our next speaker bestowed upon me my PhD in pop culture. It may not be from an accredited university, but it is from one of the few people in Illinois who is keeping corruption in check. He really is doing the Lord's work in a state that is overrun by unions and incredibly corrupt. The Illinois Policy Institute, you better thank God for them, because they are doing some phenomenal work, and they even hosted my book party there in Chicago, which was awesome before Chicago was super dangerous. He's like the anti-Lori Lightfoot. He is the chairman of the Illinois Policy Institute, and if you're good listeners, then he will give each of you your own special PhD. Let's hear it for John Tillman. Woo!
Thank you, Dolly.
Ain't no sunshine when he's gone.
We have a walk-up song.
It's not warm when he's away.
Don't stop. That was good. How's everybody doing? How many people were on Beale Street last night or maybe mid-afternoon drinking when you shouldn't have been? A raise of hands. How many are going to Beale Street tonight? I might see you there. I love that introduction from Kennedy. We had her in Illinois some years ago, and to say that Kennedy shocks and awes a conservative audience in the city of Chicago would be an understatement. The shoes alone don't really begin to tell the full story. I think you've had a taste of it already tonight. Obviously, those of you who know me primarily from the Illinois Policy Institute. I'm also the co-founder of the Liberty Justice Center, Iron Light, and Iron Light Labs. Iron Light Labs, by the way, having fun working with the FreedomFest team to promote FreedomFest this year in Memphis. I personally love Memphis, so I hope all of you are having a great time here. And I'm particularly excited about tonight's session that we're about to do with my new friend, Daryl Davis, who's sitting here on my left. But the biggest reason I think this conversation we're going to have is important is because for America to stay the freest country in the world, we really need to focus more on what unites us, what brings us together as individuals who come from diverse backgrounds and work together for common purpose. And there's too much these days in the world that is dividing us. The truth is that at our core, Americans want to get along with each other, and for the most part, we do get along with each other. Black, white, or brown, gay or straight, tall or short, fat or skinny, rural, urban, suburban, we all get along in our daily lives. Unfortunately, there's a lot of division that still needs to be mended, and there's a lot of problems in this pluralistic society that we have that still need to be fixed in terms of how we see one another, how we treat one another, and how we perceive one another. I certainly have, part of the reason I wanted to do this with Daryl is because I've had some interesting experiences when it comes to race and race relations, and it's always a very scary topic these days to talk about. You're afraid you'll say the wrong word the wrong way and suddenly you'll be canceled. I grew up in a lily white town in rural West Michigan, 3,500 people, about an hour north of Grand Rapids, and that was the experience I knew. It was an extremely rural place. I think the nearest African-American Daryl would have been 50 miles away in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that was our life as we knew it. A few years later, though, I became a college student at Wayne State University in Midtown Detroit, Michigan. I lived just off campus where I was demographically the minority. So I got to have a whole new experience. I rode a bus from the Cass Avenue corridor out to Southfield, Michigan for a job every day while going to school, and I was the only white guy on that bus. I had a lot of interesting conversations, and I learned a lot. It was exhilarating and thrilling and illuminating about how life really is, and what brings people together and what keeps them apart. And the office I worked in was a call center out in Southfield, and about 40% of the people in that call center were African American, about 60% were white. What brought them all together in that call center was that they were mostly working class people struggling during the Great Recession in 1982 and 83 in Detroit. A year or so later, I took over a branch office in Washington, D.C. Again, the ratio was about the same, 40% black, 60% white. The difference, though, was that everybody in the Washington office had a bachelor's degree or higher. Most people, in fact, had graduate degrees. A professional class of people, all again working in a call center. In Detroit, to try to make ends meet. In Washington, to try to pay for a very expensive city as they work their way up the corporate or government ladder. So I had all these amazing experiences, and then I went to Chicago and took over an office there with 80 employees, 60 white, 20 black. And I thought this was very strange because the office was located right on the border of Chicago, but I came to find out that racism did exist because my predecessor purposely avoided hiring people from the west side and south side of Chicago because he was a bigot. He did not believe that African Americans from the city could sell to white America all across the country. Because of these experiences I had, I knew that was a lie and untrue. And within 2 years, we had 300 people working in that office. About 250 of them were African American and about 50 of them were white. It was an unbelievable thrill ride. And in terms of the company, they were a little confused. They couldn't figure out what was going on in our Chicago office and how we were growing so quickly. And what I did and what our team did was just treat people with courtesy and respect that everybody wants opportunity. But I did learn that not everybody in the home office of that company liked it. It made them a little nervous. They were uncomfortable. So all these experiences taught me that racism does exist then and still does today. And differences exist, but the way to bridge those differences is through conversations. And that's why I am really thrilled to be sitting here with Daryl Davis. He's made it his life's work to break down barriers that do keep people separated. And usually people often who you would imagine never would want to ever talk to each other. Daryl is a race relations expert. He's received acclaim for his book. I love the name, Clandestine Relationships. That's Klan, K-L-A-N, as you will hear shortly. He also made a documentary film called Accidental Courtesy. My favorite part about Daryl's bio, though, is this, because I think anybody that has this sentence in their bio is super cool, and Daryl is. He's an international recording artist, actor, and leader of the Daryl Davis Band. I dream of having a band with my name in it, Daryl. And he's done film and television work as well. Many of you may have seen Daryl in the famous HBO show, The Wire. Daryl, I'm thrilled you're here. What's going to happen is Daryl's going to roam the stage and talk for about 20 minutes. When he's done with that, he's going to come and sit down, and we're going to pretend we have a little fire pit here and some marshmallows, and we're going to have a further chat to finish it off. Daryl, the stage is yours.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for being here. So, I want to tell you a little bit about myself real quick before I get into this. I'm a professional musician. I've played in all 50 states. I have been to 62 countries around the world on 6 continents. What does that mean, other than the fact that I have a lot of frequent flyer miles and hotel points? It means, folks, that I have been exposed to a wide variety of skin colors, ethnicities, religions, cultures, belief systems, etc. And all of that has shaped who I have become. And I can tell you something. The greatest weapon known to man to mitigate or even eradicate contention is the least expensive weapon that we have. And yet it's free. And yet it remains the most underused tool. It's called conversation. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. It's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. Now, what did I learn from all this travel? I'll tell you exactly what I learned. I've learned that no matter how far I go from our country, the United States, or even Memphis, Tennessee, whether it's right next door to Canada, or right next door to Mexico, or halfway around the globe, no matter how different the people may be that I encounter, perhaps they don't look like I do, they don't speak my language or worship as I do, I always conclude one thing, that we all are human beings. And as such, every human being, no matter how close, how far away, want these 5 core values in their lives. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be respected. We all want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And we want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values, or any of those 5 values, when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a society or culture in which we're unfamiliar or uncomfortable, I will guarantee you that your navigation of that society, that situation, that culture will be much more smooth and much more positive. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use extreme communication to show you how powerful communication is. So what do I spend my time doing in between gigs? Well, here's one example. I've been doing this now for 41 years. Here's an example from 30 years ago. That's in Maryland at a KKK rally. I went and talked to these people. This is almost 8 years ago in Missouri. There were more Klan people there. When the rally is over, they all go to the picnic table and get food and beverages, etc. They always leave some Klansmen there to watch the cross because it's going to topple over and they don't want anything to get sparks to catch anything on fire. So they stand there and guard the cross and put out the fire when it falls down. What do I do at these Klan rallies? Like I said, I engage in conversation. I am a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. So I'm going to show you a quick snapshot of a rally that I was at. CNN asked me if they could do a story on me. I said, sure. So they wanted to know when was the next time I was going to a rally. I said, well, I'll call you next time. So I did, and I called them. They followed me 2 hours up to this rally, and they said to me, do you think the leader, the Imperial Wizard there, will talk to us? I said, I'll do better than that. When the rally is over, I'll speak to Mr. Kelly, and I'll get him to come back to my house, and you can interview the head of the Ku Klux Klan inside a black man's house. They're like, whoa, okay. So they filmed the rally. When the thing was over, I spoke with him, and he came back to my house and sat down and talked with me, and CNN. I'm going to show you just a quick clip of that rally from CNN. Listen to what Mr. Kelly has to say.
Davis is one of the few African Americans you will ever find attending a KKK rally. More than attending, he is welcome.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
Has friendship transcended the color barrier? Listen to Kelly at a Klan rally.
I will follow that man to hell and back because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I'll respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy. In Washington, I'm Carl Rochelle, CNN Sunday Morning.
Okay, you heard the Klan leader say that he respected me. What's that all about? I'm a black guy, he's in the Klan. But he named three of those 5 core values that I gave you. I told you everybody wants to be loved, they want to be respected, they want to be heard, they want to be treated fairly and truthfully, and they want the same things for their family as we want for ours. I would see him many times. I would invite him down to my house to interview him, talk with him, get to know him, and I always applied those values. He said, we may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. Those were his words. If you don't take anything else home with you tonight, take those words home and apply them when you find yourself in an adversarial situation. In fact, let's take race off the table for a second. Like I said, I'm going to use extreme examples, right? How much more extreme can you get than a black man and a Klansman, all right? So let's take race off the table. There are a lot of hot topics out here. Abortion, nuclear weapons, global warming, the last presidential election, the upcoming presidential election, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or the war in the Middle East. These are all hot topic buttons, right? You're on one side, somebody else is on the other side. Apply those values, and that way you can have a civil conversation and learn about why that person believes the way they do, and they can learn about why you believe the way you do, and one of y'all just might change your mind. So he named 3 of those values. He said that I respected him. That's one. Now understand something. I'm not a racist. I'm not a separatist, a supremacist, a nationalist. I'm none of those things. I did not respect what Mr. Kelly had to say. I'm going to say that again to be clear with you. I did not respect what Mr. Kelly had to say. I respected his right to say it. You understand the difference, right? Okay, and that's what FreedomFest is all about. You guys here are in the world's largest forum for free speech. Everybody is here, from lay people to experts, from A to Z and everything in between. Get to know these people. Get to know the ones that you disagree with, and apply these values. He said I respected him. He said that I listened to him. That's number 2, that I allowed him to be heard, right? And he said because I respected and listened to him, he sat down and respected and listened to me. Those are his words. We may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. He named 3 values: respect, being heard or listened to, and the fact that he reciprocated it. That's fairness. Because I applied those 5 core values, not overnight, but over time, Roger Kelly began thinking about the things that I would talk with him, that I would share with him about. I did not attack him for his beliefs, even though I did not support his beliefs. I listened to him, and in turn, he listened to me. That's treating each other fairly. Over time, he began rethinking, and he decided he needed to leave the Ku Klux Klan and drop that ideology behind, okay? Because of that conversation. And when Roger Kelly left the Ku Klux Klan, he gave me his robe and hood. You laugh, but it's the same robe and hood that you saw in the video there, okay? That, folks, is the result of conversation, not yelling and screaming and beating each other to a pulp. That's the power of conversation. And of course, we have here what's called the hood. This is the hood, this is the mask. Members who want anonymity, they look at you, you don't know who they are, they peep at you through these eyelets. The mask is attached to the hood via 3 snaps and/or Velcro. If they don't care that they're identified, they simply detach the mask and the face is exposed under the hood. And you saw both types in that videotape. As I said, I have been doing this now for 41 years. I've got tons of robes and hoods by active members who have left the Klan because of our conversations. Some of them come out with me and stand on stage renouncing their organization and trying to de-radicalize people who are still involved, or prevent young people from going down the wrong path. So that's the power of conversation. Now, I deal with all types. Klan, neo-Nazi, you name it, I've got it. I've got tons of these flags and other things like this. So now I just gave you a snapshot of what I do. Now let me just walk you through it, step by step real quick if I may. Let me just back this up a second. There, what's going on here? This is 6 years ago in Charlottesville, Virginia. Y'all remember what happened there? The big white supremacist rally. I know all those guys who put it on. Some of them have even been in my home, and I've been in some of their homes. Nasty bunch of people. This is that day, August 12th, 2017, one of the many scenes. Somebody threw an aerosol can at this black gentleman. These guys, he picked up the aerosol can, lit a match, and sprayed it, and now he has an improvised flamethrower. These guys coming down the steps are Klansmen. You don't know that because you don't see them in their robes and hoods. I know that because I know every one of those guys. The guy in the front with the white t-shirt and the camouflage pants is the Grand Dragon for Virginia, meaning state leader for Virginia, all right? And they're trying to beat him with their Confederate battle flagpoles. He's trying to set them on fire. The Imperial Wizard, which means national leader, you don't see him in this shot. He's already come down about 12 or so paces ahead of them. So he's over here, out of the shot, walking this way. And he came down the steps. That's from a Confederate statue park. They're trying to preserve the Robert E. Lee statue or something. So the Imperial Wizard is over here. He came down while the guy was making the flamethrower. He turns around and he sees exactly what you all are looking at. He sees this guy trying to set his people on fire and so forth and so on. He pulls out a gun, a handgun, and points it at the head of this black man and shouts, "Hey, nigger." And then he lowers the gun and fires it, and the bullet goes into the gravel right here. Law enforcement had to dig it out. And then the Imperial Wizard turns and continues walking in the direction in which he was headed, right past the Charlottesville police, who are standing there like this with their green neon vests on, watching the whole thing go down. And not one of them moved. And for that reason and many other reasons that day, the mayor of Charlottesville fired the Charlottesville police chief, and rightfully so. So now Charlottesville has a new police chief. So the Imperial Wizard, I'm going to set it up for you. He's wearing a black bandana, a blue jean vest, and black jeans. So you're going to see him come down the steps. You'll see a puff of mist in the air. He ducks under it and comes this way. So let's take a look. Police up there in the green neon vest.
That was a gunshot.
Okay. One of the many scenes in Charlottesville that day. What would you do if that came to your town, wherever you're from? You can't say, oh, no, that doesn't happen in my town of Los Angeles, California, or Memphis. That's way over there in Charlottesville, those East Coast people. No, let me tell you something. Anywhere there's hate, that can happen. That can happen. And let me tell you something else. Charlottesville, I don't care where you live, Charlottesville is your city. Because if you are an American, this is your country. And therefore, every city, every American city is one of your cities. So whatever problems Charlottesville has are your problems. Okay, when New York got their trade centers taken down on 9/11, and you live out on the West Coast, that's still your problem, because New York is one of your cities if you're an American, all right? So what would you do? Well, here is the Imperial Wizard. You saw him in his street clothes. Here he is in his traditional Klan attire. You want to play the blame game? Okay, let's play the blame game for a second. Let's blame the black guy for trying to set people on fire. Okay, he gets some blame. He shouldn't have been doing that. Let's blame those Klansmen trying to beat somebody with their battle flag poles. They should not have been doing that. They get some blame. Let's blame him for pulling out a gun and firing it. Let's blame the Charlottesville police for not doing their job for what we pay them to do, to serve and protect. They were serving and protecting nobody that day. So yes, they definitely get some blame. But maybe we should blame ourselves for allowing our country to come to this point in the 21st century. This does not belong in any century, let alone the 21st. But you know, sitting around blaming people does nothing. I blame her, she blames me, we blame him. It goes around and nothing gets done. Our country, our society, can only become one of two things. One, it can become that which we sit back and watch it become, or two, it can become that which we stand up and make it become. Only you can answer this question. Do you want to sit back and see what your country becomes, or do you want to stand up and make it become what you want to see? I know my answer. I chose the latter. I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see. So what did I do? I called that guy up. I said, hey man, you and I need to get together and talk. Not Klansman to black man, but man to man. I said, your Confederate history is just as much a part of my history as my black history is a part of yours. It's all American history. You and I need to get together and explore American history together. I talked to him for about 20 minutes on the phone. He finally agreed, gave me his address. I drove an hour and a half, unarmed, by myself, to his house. I sat in his living room, KKK stuff all over the walls, portraits of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first Grand Wizard of the KKK, and all kinds of Confederate battle flags. I sat on his couch that was covered with a Confederate battle flag blanket, right? And I listened to him and his Klans lady fiance give me a 2-hour lecture on American history from a Confederate perspective, of course. Now, some things he got right, some things he got wrong. I didn't interrupt him. Why? Because people want to be heard. I just sat back there and listened. All right? But when he was done, now it's my turn. The first thing I did was I corrected him on the things that he got wrong. I know my history. But I also commended him on the things that he got right. But rather than sit there and give them a 2-hour lecture on American history from the other perspective, I had a better idea. A new museum had just opened up in Washington, D.C., called the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. It had just opened up. It was free, but very hard to get into because the lines were all over the place. You had to have tickets, but they were free tickets. So I had a connection there. I said, listen, rather than me sit here and go through 2 hours, I have a better idea. Let's set a date. I'll get some tickets. You guys come down to my house. I'll drive you into Washington, D.C., and we will go explore that museum together. They said, okay. Why? Because I showed him that respect of sitting there and listening to him, and now he's going to be fair and show me the same back. So I got the tickets. We set the date. He and his fiance came down to my house. We hung out in my living room, put them in my car, drove them down to D.C. to this museum. Here we are, the Klans lady, her fiance, this guy here, and myself walking into the world's largest Black History Museum. Notice what he has on his head. So what did we do in this museum? We looked at displays and exhibitions on slavery, on segregation, on integration. We watched video clips of blacks in the arts, blacks in music, in sports, in education, in medicine, in science, all kinds of things, right? Now you notice he is holding his fiance's hand. He's holding her. And he loves music. His favorite artist of all time is somebody who lived right here, Elvis Presley. I love Elvis Presley. I saw Elvis about 14 times. I met Elvis and I went to Elvis's funeral. I love Elvis. But Elvis did not invent rock and roll. He certainly popularized it more than anybody else. But the man who invented rock and roll was my boss. I worked for him for 32 years. The late, great Charles Edward Anderson Berry, better known to most of you as Chuck Berry. So he likes Chuck Berry music. He likes, everybody, Elvis, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, the Stones, Ted Nugent, Metallica, Elton John, anybody who plays rock music, any kind of rock music, all of their DNA goes back to Chuck Berry. All right? So he likes Chuck Berry music, and Chuck had donated one of his Cadillacs to the museum. I saw it at Chuck's house, but now it's sitting in the museum, and he wants to see the Cadillac. So we go over to another part of the museum. But before we go to another part of the museum, you notice he's holding her. Here's a picture of me working with Chuck. He's playing Johnny Be Good, getting ready to go into his famous duck walk and play that guitar solo. For those of you who are too young to know who Chuck Berry is, I'm sure you all remember the movie Back to the Future. That's the real deal right there. Okay, so we go over to the other side of the museum and we look at Chuck's car. There's his Cadillac. Now who's holding his fiance? Do you all see how fast I work? That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're in this museum for about 2.5 hours. That is not even, you can't even crack the tip of the iceberg of the vast information in that museum in 2.5 hours. Even in 2.5 months, you still will not see it all. But I figured 2.5 hours for one day is enough. Let's go. So we go outside. I give this Klans lady my cell phone camera. I go stand by the marquee for the museum, and I say, hey, come over here and pose for a picture with me. This is what he did. Totally unscripted, totally unplanned, spontaneous. That does not happen, folks, without conversation. That does not happen with cancel culture. You don't have to agree with somebody, but don't cancel them out, all right? Now, that's not the end of the story. It goes a lot deeper than that. Okay, this is 2 months shy of a year from when he pulled out that gun and Charlottesville said, hey, nigger, boom, all right? That was August of 2017. This is June of 2018. So now, within a few weeks of this picture, our trip to the museum, he's gonna marry that Klans lady fiance. Well, guess what? I've been working with them for about a year. Guess who gets invited to the Klan wedding? Right? I got invited to the Klan wedding. I said, yes, I'll go. But then it went even deeper than that, because the young lady is from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and her father was too ill to go up and do his duty of escorting his daughter down the aisle and giving her away. Rather than ask one of their trusted Klansmen on the steps trying to bang somebody in the head with the Confederate battle flag pole, they asked me if I would escort her, if I would step in and do that. Conversation, folks. I said, yeah. But I said, listen, I need to call CNN because this has never happened before. I need this documented. They trust me. They said, okay, but please tell CNN not to film the faces of my Klan members because, they could lose their jobs, et cetera. I said, I understand. He says, they can film his face, her face, my face, the preacher's face. I said, okay. So I called CNN. I said, listen, you all want to do this? They said, yeah. So they came out, and they had interviewed him a long time ago. And he had said to them, I'm going to be buried in my Klan robe, and blah, blah, blah. So they ran that quote of him under this wedding clip. He got married in his backyard. So here is the clip.
As you stand in the presence of God.
This time, it was Davis giving something away. The bride.
Me and his friendship has been something really special to me.
She wanted me to be a part of this wedding. That's beautiful. That's a seed planted.
So there you have the Klansman Imperial Wizard groom, the Klans lady bride, and the surrogate father. Folks, like I said, he's come a long ways at this point. He still had a little ways to go. But the important thing is he's going in the right direction. People don't change just overnight, do a 180. That happens on TV shows that only have an hour to solve the problem, right? It doesn't happen in real life. Change occurs incrementally. But if you're willing to put in the time and apply those 5 tools I gave you, that can be the result, folks. Thank you.
Well, now you know why Daryl's a legend, not just in terms of music, but in terms of changing people's lives. Those are just incredible stories. Tell us a little bit about where the genesis of all this came from. This is an unbelievably unique path and passion. Where was the seed planted?
Well, I'm 65 years of age, and my parents were in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American embassy brat, traveling all over the world, starting at the age of 3. My first exposure to school was overseas. You get assigned to a country for 2 years, you come back home here to the States, you're here for a few months, maybe a year, and you get assigned to another country abroad. So my first exposure to school was over there. my classmates, this is 1961, my classmates from Nigeria, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Japan, anybody who had an embassy where we were assigned, all of their kids went to the same school, right? So I was in this multicultural environment. And because that was my first exposure to school, that became my baseline for what school should be. But every time I'd come home after my parents' assignment, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there was not the amount of diversity in the classroom back here that I had overseas. So literally, I was living about 10 years ahead of my time in the future because that multicultural scenario had yet to come to this country. It's here now, okay, but it wasn't back then in the early 1960s. So one time we came back, it was 1968. I was age 10. I was in fourth grade. I was the only, there were 2 black kids in the whole school. Me in 4th grade, a little black girl in 2nd grade. The only time I ever saw her was during recess or lunchtime. So consequently, all of my friends at that school were white. And some of my guy friends were members of the Cub Scouts. They invited me to join, so I joined the Cub Scouts. We had a parade, and I was the only black participant in this parade. The streets were blocked off. There was a Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, 4-H Club, and Boy Scouts, and whatever other organizations. Streets were blocked off. We're all marching, having fun. Everybody on the sidewalks were white, waving and cheering and, wishing us all kinds of well, until we got to a certain point in this route when suddenly, pow, I'm getting hit with bottles and soda pop cans and small debris from the street by a small group of spectators off to my right on the sidewalk. And I look to see who's throwing things, and I see this small group of people mixed in with the larger crowd. I remember it being a couple of kids, maybe a year or 2 older than me. I didn't know them, and a couple of adults who I assume were their parents. I don't know. But anyway, my first thought was, oh, those people over there don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. And it wasn't until my den mother, my cub master, and my troop leader all came running over and covered me with their own bodies and quickly escorted me out of the danger. And I kept saying, why? I didn't do anything. Why are they doing this? And all they would do is kind of shush me and rush me along, tell me to keep moving. So I kept moving. They never answered my question as to why this was happening to me. So I had no clue. And when I got home, my mom and dad, who were not at the parade, were cleaning me up, putting mercurochrome and Band-Aids on me and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what happened. And for the first time in my life, my mother and father sat me down and explained to me what racism was. Now, believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. I had no clue what they were talking about because that word and that behavior was not in my sphere. I was around people from all over the world, and they didn't treat me like that. What my parents were saying had to be wrong. And to further enforce my theory was the fact that the people who did this to me did not look any different than my fellow Scouts or my fellow Americans overseas, whether they were my little Danish or Swedish or French friends. So it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. And you see, I didn't have big brothers and sisters to learn from their experiences passed down to me. I'm an only child. My folks got it right the first time. So, I always believed my parents. But on this day, I thought my parents were lying to me. Well, I quickly found out that they weren't lying. This phenomenon called racism did exist. So I formed a question in my mind, which was, at that age, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And for the next 55 years, I've been looking for the answer to that question. And that's what has led me on this quest.
It's an amazing quest, and especially because just watching that and having lived the life I've lived, that kind of hate that is so visceral that you saw when the guy pulled the gun and fired the bullet, it's just hard to understand where that comes from, what the genesis of it is on their side. And for you to have the open heart to be able to go and talk to people that are just so filled with that hate, it awes me. But why do you think where do you think that's coming from? What do you think is the root of that we could actually do something about to help eliminate it?
Well, they're a white supremacist, a Klansman, a neo-Nazi, or whatever, any kind of person. They're not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life. There are different reasons why they would join these kinds of organizations. My grandfather was in the Klan. My daddy was in the Klan, so I'm in the Klan. My kids are going to be in the Klan. So family tradition passed down. Other times they joined because they moved to a town that was kind of a Klan stronghold. So if you wanted to do business in that town and get along, you had to assimilate. You joined the local Chamber of Commerce, the country club, and the local KKK. Other reasons could be economic, like you take a depressed town, some of the mining towns, for example, in Pennsylvania, where most of the miners are white people. And they go right out of high school, right to the mines, and they've been doing that for generations, right? Their families work in the mines for hundreds of years. But now the mining company that owns the mines and hires the workers, now these miners are not racist at all. They make good money, they pay their bills, they're happy, right? But then the company gets greedy and says, you know what? We can lay off, our miners and hire some of those immigrants that just came in and just pay them that much money and save money. So they lay off these people, and now these people who know how to do nothing else but mine, they're out of a job. They can't work anything else, and the bank is knocking on the door for the mortgage or the loan or whatever, and they don't have any money. The Klan will come into a town like that and say, the blacks have the NAACP and the Jews have the ADL, and nobody stands up for the white man but the Klan. Your job's not gone, but you're gone. Some such and such has your job. Come join us, we'll get your job back. And these people who are never racist, they think, they're at wit's end. They don't know what to do. Well, my job is still there. Why aren't I there? Well, okay, give me an application, sign me up. So it happens that way as well.
Sometimes it feels, Daryl, like we're not the United States of America, but we're the disunited States of America.
The divided States of America.
Divided States of America. Bill Courtney talked earlier about the challenges with identity. I've been part of a group of people doing a lot of research on the way people process group identity in their own identity. African Americans, Latinos, Asians, whites, married, not married, with children, et cetera. I've done a deep dive on this with focus groups as well as some surveys. And one of the things that comes across is universally, black, white, brown, Democrat, Republican, Independent, people still believe in America as a pluralistic, tolerant, amazing American dream-creating society. What really shocked me, particularly among Latinos, but also to some degree among African Americans in these focus groups, was they wanted their identity, what the political world would call their identity. They wanted that to be seen, but they did not want their entire being and self, their entire humanity, to be defined by that one thing.
Right.
So I actually think group identity politics is a cancer in our country that we have to destroy, because it actually, the idea of diversity, there's a positive version of it and a negative version of it. What it's doing is it's dividing us and making us focus on what separates us and what creates division, rather than this beautiful thing you're doing where you're trying to understand, communicate, have the conversation, and focus on what brings people together. How can we overcome the negative aspects of group identity politics and try to even today, this word by some is considered politically incorrect, but what we used to call the melting pot, where people came, black, brown, or white, gay or straight, tall or short, fat or skinny, new immigrant or from the Mayflower, we all come here and we work together, and we get along in our daily lives, we interact with people in our workplaces, in our social lives, and in our communities that are diverse in most of America, and we all get along most of the time. It's not that there aren't problems, because there certainly are, as we're discussing here, but what can we do to try to resolve this individually and culturally?
Absolutely. And what I'm telling you is, I don't want you all to leave here and run to a KKK or neo-Nazi rally. Don't try that at home, right? But you all can do something, and I call it walking across the cafeteria. And you can do it physically, or you can do it virtually. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, you notice in a diverse city, such as Memphis, for example, you have schools or companies, and a diverse population works there. They may be working on the same project. They might even be sharing the same cubicle. But what happens at 12 noon? Everybody goes downstairs to the cafeteria, and then they self-segregate. Blacks sit with blacks, Hispanics sit with Hispanics. They just, branch off. Does that mean that they're racist? No, not at all. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity, right? But now, if you were to leave your little comfort zone of people and walk across the cafeteria and try to sit at one of their tables, and they say, no, you get out of here, go back to where you belong, to your table, then yes, there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But I would say, once or twice a week, just take it upon yourself to walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table. You have a lot to learn from them, you have a lot to teach them, and in the process, I will guarantee you will most likely make a new friend. And you can do this at your workplace, at your school, wherever, in the restaurant, whatever, right? You can also do it virtually. You know, if you have a co-worker who's in another state or another town or whatever, you all do Zoom meetings, you know, to get together. Set up an appointment with one after work, after hours, and say, hey, we've been working together on this project. I've never met you. I don't know a whole lot about you, but let's you and I get together and chat over Zoom one day after work or whatever. I want to know about you and your family and tell you about mine. Folks, this happens. Listen to me. It bothers me a great deal as an American. Don't get me wrong, I'm patriotic, I love my country, but this bothers me. We call ourselves the greatest nation on the face of this earth. I have a little trouble with that. I would say perhaps we are the greatest nation on the face of this earth technologically. After all, we, Americans, built the technology to put a man on the moon, right? We did that. And while astronaut Neil Armstrong was up there walking around talking about one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, we could talk to him live from Earth all the way to the moon via satellite radio phone, live. We built that technology. Everybody in here has a cell phone. Everybody in here has email. Type a few numbers, type a few words, hit send. You're talking to people right next door in Kentucky or across the country in California or Australia, Africa, China, wherever you want to talk. We, Americans, built that technology. How is it that we, Americans, can talk to people as far away as the moon, anywhere on the face of this earth, but yet so many of us have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door because he or she is a different color, a different religion, a different persuasion, a different whatever. It seems to me that before we can call ourselves the greatest, perhaps our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And once we got them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are, all right? Because folks, thank you. We are living in the 21st century. Like I said, that does not belong in any century, let alone the 21st. We are living in space-age times, so let's stop thinking with Stone Age minds.
How about that? So I'll close with coming back to your 5 core values that people share. When I mentioned that I started out in a small lily white town and all of the news I got about African Americans was from the news. And of course this would have been around the time of the Detroit riots, the LA riots, and all the rest. That was the lens I had. Mm-hmm. And when I went to school in Wayne State and then eventually worked in those call centers and lived it, what I discovered was exactly what you said. Everybody wants the same things. People want to be in love. They want to have a family. They want to build a life. They want to grow in their community. So I think building those bridges through conversations is some of the greatest advice any of us could ever get. And I encourage all of us, the next time you're traveling and you're at a hotel bar or an airport bar, go sit next to the person that's different than you and strike up that conversation and do what Daryl says, because he's lived a life that is incredible that we all should be inspired and motivated by. Daryl, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And I think we have a couple more people coming on after me. When you all get done, check out Elvis. When you all get done, come down to the other side of the building on this floor and check out the band. I'm going to sit there and show you what rock and roll is all about.
I was just about to say that. You got to watch them later and see the music roll. Thank you.
Ain't no sunshine when he's gone. It's not warm when he's away. But ain't no sunshine when he's gone.
You're the PhD giver. There is sunshine right now to be had, though. We're in Memphis. What does that mean? If there's one performer who comes to mind when I say Memphis, who is it? So let's bring Elvis to the stage, party people! Woo!
right, how's everybody doing out there?
A little more action. Take it away, Elvis.
All right, good to see everybody. And y'all had a good time tonight so far? Welcome to Memphis anyway. I guess y'all get that already. We're going to do a little music for you, a couple songs, and I hope you enjoy it. This song here is called Blue Suede Shoes. Well, it's one for the money, two for the show. Three to get ready now. Go, cat, go, but don't step on my blue suede shoes. Well, you can do anything but stay off of my blue suede shoes. Well, you can knock me down, step on my face, slander my name all over the place. Do anything that you want to do, but honey, lay off of them shoes. Don't you step on my blue suede shoes. And you can do anything but stay off of my blue suede shoes. Oh, let's go, guys. I'll walk the dog. Well, you can burn my house, steal my car, drink my liquor from an old fruit jar. Do anything that you want to do, but honey, lay off of them shoes. Don't you step on my blue suede shoes. And you can do anything but stay off of my blue suede shoes. Rock it, son. Yeah. Come on, y'all. Well, it's the one for the money, two for the show. Three to get ready now. Go, 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 but don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Well, you can do anything but stay off of my blue suede shoes. All right, here we go. Well, it's blue, blue, blue suede shoes. Blue, blue, blue suede shoes, yeah. Blue, blue, and blue suede shoes, baby. Blue, blue, blue suede shoes. You can do anything but stay off of my blue suede shoes. All right, thank you very much. And somebody asked me backstage earlier, "What are you singing?" I said, "Well, I had some requested songs, and I told them y'all just pick what you want to hear, and we'll do them for you." Anyway, this song was actually done and written for Elvis in 1968 by Earl Brown, and it kind of told about the times. It was called "If I Can Dream," and it goes like this. There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. Got to be birds flying higher in the sky, more blue. If I can dream of a better land where all my brothers walk hand in hand. Tell me why, oh I want my dream come true. Oh, why? There must be peace and understanding sometime. Strong winds of promise that will blow away all the doubts and fears. If I can dream of a warmer sun where hope keeps shining on everyone. Tell me why, oh I want that sun up here. We're lost in a cloud with too much rain. We're trapped in a world that's trouble with pain. But as long as a man has the strength to dream, he can redeem his soul and fly. Deep in my heart, there's a trembling question. Still I am sure that the answer's gonna come somehow. Out there in the dark, there's a blackening candle, yeah. While I can think, while I can talk, while I can stand, while I can walk, while I can dream. Oh, please let my dream come true. Right now. Oh, let it come true right now. Oh, yeah. Hang it on, son. All right, thank you, ladies. We're going to be walking out there if you'd like some pictures. Till we meet again, may God bless you as He's blessed me. Thank you.
How about a little more conversation? Let's do it. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I would like to thank our sponsors and exhibitors. Iron Light is our premier sponsor this year at Freedom Fest, and we want to thank them for their incredible, unwavering support and partnership. Gita Genesis, a diamond exhibitor, also co-sponsoring the Subversion Summit. So check them out if anyone's getting married or someone needs diamond earrings because someone else screwed up and needs to say, I'm sorry. We're also excited to welcome Treasure Investments, Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, Young Americans for Liberty, Ed Choice, Reason, and American Culture Project. Remember, tomorrow is Free to Speak Day. This is sponsored by Free to Choose Network with main stage speeches and breakout sessions. So check your agenda for Free to Speak sessions and feel free to attend all of them. You're also invited to our opening reception in the exhibit hall. We encourage you to stop by the bookstore in the exhibit hall where we will be hosting the glorious book signings with Gloria Alvarez, Richard Epstein, Jeffrey Hirsch, and other Freedom Fest authors this year. We're going to be featuring a special cocktail. What did she say, cocktail? It's cock-a-clock. Cocktail o'clock. Nobel Cause. That is brought to us by Mike Rowe's Noble Tennessee Whiskey and Mike Rowe Works. That means a man must be in his house to go find him. Visit the artwork at Treasure Investments. That's booth 600A. Inquire about their VIP dinner tomorrow night. Someone's getting lobster. And don't forget our opening night film. This is at 8 p.m. The Unredacted. It is an inside look at a rehabilitation program for the men who were incarcerated at Guantanamo Bay. It's been making waves all over the world. We're going to need a bigger boat. It was withdrawn and banned from major film festivals after the cancel culture bullies went after it. Joanne Skousen says it's one of the best films ever submitted to the Anthem Film Festival, powered by Iron Light Labs. Come see for yourself, 8 p.m. tonight. Tomorrow morning, we're starting early, but we're not getting squirrely. You can join the festival with me and TK. We've got the charming and delightful Call Me Mule at 8:45. I don't think that's a cocktail, but I certainly am not going to judge on a Thursday. I'll see you back here on the main stage 1. TK will be at main stage 2. And the whole party starts up at 8:45. So what you do between now and then, that is between you and your Lord and Savior. I'm a libertarian. I do not judge. So have at it. Party in Exhibit Hall. And we'll see you tomorrow. Love you all madly. Bye.